Well, hello, welcome back to Hobbies with Jose, everyone. Today we have part 1 of our repaint of Studio Series 8606 Grimlock. Are you ready to start? Welcome back to the channel, everyone. So good to have you back. And here we are yet again at the start of another new project, which hopefully won't be too daunting. This will be the biggest repaint that I've done so far, but I think what's going to help is the fact that the transformation isn't very complicated, and there's not a lot of small pieces to work with, so I'm hoping for smooth sailing, but we'll see how it goes. Now, before we do start with the disassembly process, let's just talk a little bit about what minor modifications we're going to make to the figure. Now, as I mentioned in my review, which hopefully you got a chance to check out, I'll put a quick link up here if you'd like to take a look. I do think this figure is really close to perfection. There's not a single extra bit of kibble on this figure. Everything hanging off the back is supposed to be there. The only minor modifications I plan on doing are really just filling in these peg holes on the arms and the little peg holes on the shoulders meant for a wheelie, which I don't really plan on utilizing that figure anymore. And lastly, the little pegs on the sides of Grimlock's neck meant for Willie, I'm going to plan to cut those off as well. But everything else is just perfect the way it is, so let's go ahead and take this big bad boy apart. Now there is a ball joint at the neck, but he actually has a screw in the back, so I think that's going to make it easier to remove the head. Having the visor separated from the rest of the front is going to make it super easy in painting that, so I do love that. He does have a screw rather than a pin, keeping the T-Rex neck on, so we'll work on that one next. And it's not coming out. I'm guessing there's a rod inside, so I need to disassemble the whole body, so we'll hold off on that still. I guess we can go ahead and remove the other 3 pins on the head and the neck. I should mention I do have the DNA kit on pre-order, so hopefully that comes in before we're done. And it is interesting how, even though they didn't go with the clear yellow plastic piece for the neck, they still kept the piece inside. But that's where the benefit of having the clear DNA kit comes in if you want to go with that piece, which I think I'm going to go with the solid one anyways. It is important to note though that the neck is still made out of the tinted clear plastic. We're going to have to keep that in mind so we don't destroy this. Now we do have the inner chest itself held together by a total of 4 screws, so let's go ahead and work on those next. Now this white pin, I'm going to leave that alone. I'm not going to touch that. But I do see 2 little grooves on the back side of this white piece. So I think we can push it out from here. There we go. And 2 more little tiny grooves on this side here. All right. Next up, we're going to work on the arms a bit and take off those screws in the back. And as for the outer chest piece, looks like we have 4 screws that are keeping the 2 halves together, and 2 screws here on the inside that are keeping the clear piece in place. So let's go ahead and take all of these off. And here we can get an excellent look at the Autobot symbol underneath, which I love how it's raised and it's very well painted too. That's going to be fun to repaint. Now, here's an important thing to note. The pieces in the back are actually gold painted. It's more of an off-white colored plastic, but the front chest piece, it does look like it's a gold plastic that isn't painted at all. So I'm a little bit worried about stripping the paint on this one. I think I might just go over with some alcohol and try to be careful with this piece because it's a very important piece. And now on to the legs. I think I'm going to start by removing these 2 pins, separating the 2 halves. So other than the 2 screws holding these 2 halves together, they're actually also joined here at the bottom by this pin. And the bad news is that there's no exit hole on the other side. I'd be putting a hole in the foot, so that's going to be a problem. Let me worry about the rest first, and then we'll see what we can do about this. I should be able to take off the bottom heel at least. There we go. And this little piece should come off pretty easily too. Or not. Well, let's see if we can separate the upper leg at least. This is an interesting little piece. I wasn't expecting to find this, but this is what gives us the ratchet mechanism on the knee. There's no need to paint this, so I'm going to go ahead and put this with the screws. So we got that separated at least. I do want to go ahead and see if I can remove this back half, which has a pretty simple pin. Alright, well I do want to get these 2 pieces separated, so I think I am going to go ahead and hammer out that pin, which unfortunately is going to cause a hole to be formed onto the foot. But once it's separated, I should be able to fill it in with putty and get it fixed. Okay, there's actually one thing I forgot. Because the pin was originally hammered in this direction, that means that this side has the edge with the groove, so it needs to come out in this direction. So what I've got to do first is drill a hole into this side. And the fact that it's at an angle makes it that much more difficult, but just poking in a hole first should make it easier for the drill to go through. Made it! And this part shouldn't be too difficult to fix, just some minor surgery needed. But now that we have that out of the way, there we go. Here's another interesting piece. This is what helps connect this piece to the front of the leg. We'll add this one to our screw cup as well. And lastly, we just have these two last screws. Well, that's different. And since these have white pins in the back, we're going to keep them as is. Now we do have a couple more of those white plastic pieces inside of this centerpiece, which assists with the ratcheted joints. And of course I'll be putting these to the side as well. And here we have Studio Series Grimlock, for the most part, completely disassembled. Now what we need to do next is strip the paint, but we do have a problem.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Thankfully, I am prepared. Now I am going to go ahead and pour this off onto my larger container, but I'm definitely going to have to add more paint stripper, which again, we use 9 parts, 91% isopropyl alcohol, and 1 part lacquer thinner. And we'll go ahead and let them sit here for about a half hour, and we'll come back and check on them then. We're back, and it's been a little over 30 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and pour out as much as I can into this old tupper, and just using an old toothbrush, I'll just brush away the excess paint. Now that we've scrubbed off all of the paint, we're going to clean them off a little just to get the residual paint stripper off of the pieces. And we'll be doing that by scrubbing them down with some all-purpose cleaner. At this point, I did go ahead and rinse all of the pieces with warm water, and I have them all drying off, except for all of these. I did dry them by hand, and that's because on these I'm going to do a little bit of modifications onto. Except for the chest piece, I did just want to show that I was able to remove the red paint from the Autobot symbol, and all I really did was just apply some of the stripper solution onto a cloth and just gently rub it onto the symbol. After working it for about a minute, it came off pretty clean. As far as the cleanup, what we're going to do first though is the feet. I do want to go ahead and take care of these since I did have to mangle them a little bit, but it shouldn't be so hard to clean them up and fill them in with some putty. So let's get started with that. Next up, I do want to fill in various peg holes that the figure has. And I forgot to mention this in the beginning, but I also want to get these hollow points on Grimlock's fist filled in too. I've had characters in the past where I left the fists hollow, but because Grimlock has them a bit larger, I think I can get them filled in. As for this piece that is the base of the neck for the dyno mode, I'm simply going to just cut off and sand down these pegs that were meant for Willy. And for the last bit of modification today, I'm going to remove the two little side tabs from the weapon since I don't plan on attaching it onto the back of the dyno mode. And I'm also going to cut off the little pegs in the front meant for some blast effects and drill in some holes just to make it a bit more realistic. I think I'm going to go a little bit bigger on the holes. Well, we got a lot done today. Next week, we'll go ahead and start adding some of the primer and maybe some of the color as well. Hopefully you can all join me for that. And you can feel free to follow me on the social medias on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Plus, I also just started streaming Red Dead Redemption 2, which I'm having a ton of fun with. You can catch me live on weekends, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, not just on YouTube, but on Twitch as well. But thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you again next week. Take care, everyone.